Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a new video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my love-hate relationship with slow burn slash art house slash psychological horror, and I'm making it a point from now on to leave this blank wall behind me and to center myself this way so that way I can pop movie posters up here on the screen as I'm editing this. But yeah, I'm kind of getting used to this whole horror channel setup thing now. So a little bit of background, I've been really into this slow burn type of horror ever since I saw The Witch or The Vitch in 2015, which was almost 7 years ago now, which is crazy to me. But that movie kind of changed something within me because watching it, I felt disturbed, not scared, and it stuck with me for a while after. And I found out that A24 would distribute a lot of films like this, and not all of them are A24 that we're going to talk about today, but A24 tends to distribute a lot of these psychological disturbing movies. They're set apart from just slow burns in general, because we had a lot of slow burns in the 70s. You had Black Christmas, you had The Wicker Man, which falls kind of into this category, but we're not going to be talking about older movies today, just to keep things simpler. But you had movies like that. You had The Shining, and slow burn horror was definitely a thing. But then there's this artsy vibe, this disturbing psychological vibe that you add to it that's been more intense in movies recently. So I'm going to talk about some of my favorite and least favorites and rank them, which means this is going to definitely be a controversial video because some of my favorite movies might be your least favorite. Some of my least favorite might be your favorite. And I will give reasons for why I like and don't like these movies too. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I want to keep the comment section civil though. We all just have opinions on movies and we're not all gonna like the same thing. So yeah, I might be a little bit scared to post this, but you know, I really wanted to talk about this. I've been thinking about this video idea for a long time, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. We're gonna try to keep this video spoiler free, by the way, in case some of you haven't seen these movies, and I want to keep the comment section either spoiler free or put a little like warning if you're going to talk spoilers. I have 7 movies on my least favorite list. I'm kind of scared to start here. So we're gonna start with my least favorite of the least favorite, which was Lamb, and that came out this year, or last year in 2021, and I was so excited for this movie, you guys. I thought it had potential based on the trailer, and I know that maybe it wasn't setting out to be a complete horror movie, but it really just fell flat for me. There wasn't enough plot to me, not enough stuff actually happened in the movie, and I ended up just disappointed while watching it. There were a couple of payoffs, if you will call them that, but there was nothing that was enough to warrant watching the entire movie. Now, just a disclaimer here, when I talk about my least favorites, I'm not saying that these movies are badly made by any means or badly acted. They're actually really beautiful films, all of them, even the ones I don't like, and it's more just that the story, the script didn't work for me. Lamb was one of my most disappointing movies of the year, so I've got to put that one at the bottom. So next, we have, oops, wrong side. Next we have The Dark and the Wicked. Okay, this is where the controversy might actually begin. So The Dark and the Wicked has a pretty split audience, people that absolutely love it and then people that don't. For me, something about the movie just didn't work. While I won't deny that there are some pretty good scares and disturbing things that happen in the movie, I never quite connected with the main characters enough to care about them, and I wasn't really following their relationships or the family dynamic very well. I didn't really care too much about them, which in turn led me to not be that invested in them when we get to the end of the movie. This is one of those movies that tries to go the dark and depressing route, but not all movies can do that very well, and I don't think this particular one worked for me, although I know it worked for a lot of others, and if it did work for you, I'm happy for you about that. I don't have too many qualms about the movie itself or the scares. I think the horror was pretty well integrated. I just didn't really follow the characters or care about them that much, and I didn't understand some of the decisions that they were making throughout the film. Next on the list is The Pretty Little Thing That Lived in the House. I think I got that title right. Now, this movie is very beautiful. It's kind of poetic. However, it's not really a movie. It might have worked better as like a short or something like that. A lot of these movies could have worked better as shorts. I think Lamb would have been an especially compelling short. As full-length feature films though, I found myself getting bored watching the pretty little thing that lived in the house, but I can't deny the beauty of the filmography of this movie. I just couldn't really connect with it, and to be honest, I cannot remember the plot hardly at all because I don't really think there was much of a plot. Next on the list we have It Comes at Night, which came out in 2017, and after watching The Witch, I was all on board with A24. However, I left the theater feeling disappointed and I have not rewatched it since 2017. Unfortunately, this movie didn't do it for me. I felt like it was effective in being emotional and depressing, and I did care about the characters. Well, I don't know if I would categorize it as a horror film, which is okay, but the trailers made it seem like a horror film, and it might have been the marketing that did this one in for me, because the marketing made it seem like this was going to be a full-on horror movie close to The Witch, which a lot of people argue isn't really horror, but for me The Witch is more of a horror than most of the movies that I'm talking about right now. I still think It Comes at Night is a well-made movie, a well-acted movie, and I think that this story can pull at your heartstrings, but I just felt like there was something missing from it, and that's why I have not rewatched it since. Okay, so now this is where things might get ugly here. We're gonna talk about the top 3, which means these are the ones I consider to be best on my least favorite list, but I still don't like them that much. So my number 3 is a movie called The Lodge, which a lot of you probably have seen. And this movie is really, really dark, depressing, but I wouldn't say it achieves the level of deepness or disturbingness that it wants to achieve. It also has a really big twist in it that completely changes the genre and tone and direction of the film entirely. The Lodge came out in 2019, so it was kind of like right off the heels of Hereditary, and I could feel a little bit of influence from that movie, but on a much smaller scale. There were a couple of really shocking moments in the movie, and there were some that really did scare me, but I didn't feel like the movie overall was as deep as it wanted to be, and there were some unexplored themes, unfortunately, that I wish were explored more without getting into spoiler territory, so I'm not gonna go ahead and tell you guys that. If you want to see a separate video on The Lodge, let me know in the comments down below. So next on the list we have a movie called Saint Maud, which I think came out in 2020, but it was released, I believe, in another country first, so I'm not sure what year the movie is. It might be 2019. And Saint Maud is a movie that I was bored throughout the most part of, unfortunately, but the last 20 minutes of the movie really made it for me, and because of that I'm putting it ahead of The Lodge. Now still, even though the last 20 minutes were amazing and just extremely effective and haunting, the rest of the movie was lacking something for me. There wasn't very much dialogue, if I'm being honest, and kind of like a lot of the movies on this list, the film seemed to suffer from long, empty moments that never led up to anything, and even though there is this big thing that happens at the end, I kind of wanted that to be going on for a longer portion of the movie. So I don't know if I'd want to rewatch it again, but I would rewatch those last 20 to 25 minutes. They were just totally awesome. I don't know if awesome's even the word to describe it. It was just insane, and especially the very last shot of the film, no spoilers, but the very last shot of the film was something exceptional, and I just wish that the beginning, like 2/3 of the film, would live up to the end. Finally, we have Relic. The only reason I'm putting Relic above Saint Maud and The Lodge is because I wasn't quite as bored throughout Relic as I was throughout the other two films, and The Lodge just made me straight plain out angry. Now, Relic is a weird film. It's not so much a horror. There are horrible elements that happen in the movie, but it's more of an emotional family story about 3 generations of women, and I really enjoyed it in the end. I was really sad with the way that this movie went, but I thought it was a beautiful film even if it wasn't too much of a horror. Though what's stopping me from putting this on my best movies list is just that the film was a bit confusing to me and how there were like parallels going on and different things, and I just wasn't exactly sure about all the symbolism and how it manifested, I guess, in this movie. But besides that, I really enjoyed it, and I thought that the message it was pushing through was really beautiful. In terms of scares though, I would put Saint Maud and The Lodge ahead of it. In terms of the overall movie, I have to put it ahead of those two, because even though those last 20 minutes of Saint Maud are an absolute masterpiece, I can't really justify the rest of the film. Whew, so now that that's over, let's get on to my best movies list. So all of these movies I like to a degree, but if I had to rank them, this is how I would rank them. There are actually 9 movies on this list, and by the way, I haven't seen like every movie that falls into this slow burn psychological horror category, so if I'm missing some, I probably just haven't seen it. So list the ones that you recommend me to watch down below. Okay, so I really am not too sure how to rank these movies. I put It Follows at the bottom. The only reason I put It Follows at the bottom was because I thought it was the least scary of these movies, or the least disturbing, even though I love It Follows, and that's a movie I could actually rewatch, and when it first came out I was very obsessed with it. However, I don't know how high it ranks on this like slow burn psychological list, if that makes sense. And I'm just ranking these movies based on how they made me feel, so for some of you, if It Follows did it for you, that's great. But I still rank It Follows really high in general as a movie, but on this particular list, it's at the bottom. I also kind of want to argue that even though It Follows is more of a slow burn, it doesn't really fit into this like art house vibe that some of these other movies fit into, so maybe it's just that I'm putting it on the wrong list altogether. Next we have The Lighthouse. Now The Lighthouse is a little bit above It Follows on this list because I found this movie to be very disturbing, and I love Robert Eggers as well as a director. Very excited for The Northman. That's going to be great and phenomenal, I can already tell. But The Lighthouse is not really a horror, but at the same time it kind of is a horror. Can't really explain it. It made me feel all weird at the end after watching it, and I have to say that it is quite a masterpiece even though it doesn't fit into any genre really. I know some people really dislike The Lighthouse, and I don't like it better than The Witch. That's why it's lower on this list. However, the acting, the symbolism, the way this was shot in black and white, and just everything, the cinematography in this movie, the dynamic between the two main characters and how it changes throughout, and some of the deeper messages throughout the film just put it on this list for me, even if it's lower down, because it's not exactly too much of a scary horror film. This was also the movie where I hailed Robert Pattinson for his acting capabilities alongside William Dafoe, of course. Next, number 7 on my list is The Black Coat's Daughter. This movie is so disturbing, you guys. Some of you guys might find that it fits into the boring category for you, but for me, it was really psychologically disturbing when I got to the end of it. I was kind of bored throughout the beginning of the movie, I won't lie, but then we get to the middle and the end, things started to pick up and get weird, and by the ending I was just shocked at what this movie was. I don't even know if I'd rewatch it because it left me feeling really disturbed, if I'm being honest. Number 6 on the list is The Babadook, which came out in 2014, I believe. Now I know this is a love or hate film. A lot of people really dislike it because they wanted more of a monster movie, and when I saw this movie I didn't realize it was going to be about depression, grief, etc. But I actually really liked the way the movie dealt with the themes, even though it wasn't really an uplifting film in any sense like most of these on the list. It was very bleak, very dull, and very depressing, but it really was a powerful story to me, and I thought that they effectively touched on the themes that they were trying to go for. Plus there were a couple of good scares, and I thought the payoff at the end was worth the slow burn-ness of this movie, unlike some others we talked about earlier. Now I'd like to hear your opinions on The Babadook because I know, again, it's a very love-hate movie, so do you love it or do you hate it? Now number 5 on the list is Midsommar. I know it sounds like it's low down on the list, but it isn't. This is an Ari Aster film, of course. This came out in 2019, 1 year after Hereditary. Midsommar is one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen in my entire life. I think about some of the scenes sometimes and I can't forget them even though I only saw the movie technically once. I've seen little like sequences on YouTube and things like that, but I've never dared to actually turn on the movie and watch it again. So I saw it once in theaters in 2019 and it still haunts me to this day. I won't tell you which scenes I'm talking about in case you haven't seen the movie, but that is just one psychologically disturbing horror movie. This is ranked a little bit lower on the list only because it draws out very long. However, I didn't find myself bored. I just found myself extremely anxious on the first watch. Like, I was just really anxious watching this movie in theaters because I knew what Hereditary was, at that point, and I knew that Midsommar was going to probably be on a similar level of disturbing, so I was kind of just bracing myself, but it gave me serious anxiety in the theaters. Also, if you'd like me to go into a deep dive on Midsommar, I'd be happy to do so eventually, because even though I haven't rewatched the movie, I've looked up a lot about some of the meanings and everything like that, because I was kind of obsessed with it after it psychologically scarred me, and I had to keep looking up things and clearing things up and just torturing myself further. Okay, so now we're at number 4 on the list. Yay, we're getting close to the top. Number 4 on the list is Get Out. I don't even know if Get Out really falls very clearly onto this list, but it's definitely a psychological horror, and it's definitely more of a slow burn, so I'm just gonna stick it on this list anyway because it's Jordan Peele's masterpiece. I know this movie did very well in the theaters when it came out. Overall, I think this is one of the best made movies on the list. I think that it is very well paced for it being a slow burn, and that's something that slow burns really struggle with. A lot of them struggle with the pacing, obviously. By the way, if you've noticed that Us is not included on any of these lists, I don't think Us is really a slow burn very much. I don't know, Us feels like a total different category of movie. There's even some action in it, so I don't know if I even want to put Us on this list. Kind of like I struggled to even put It Follows on this list, if that makes sense. But yeah, Get Out is definitely one of my favorite horror films to date. And now we've reached the top 2. So number 2 on the list is Ari Aster's Hereditary, none other than Hereditary. Now the reason this ranks so high on the list is because I think it traumatized me enough to the point where even seeing any scene from the movie gives me PTSD and I freak out and start getting anxiety. So I don't think I can ever rewatch this movie or any of the scenes from it, if I'm being honest, because that's how psychologically traumatized I am from it. And it's not even like Midsommar, where there are some scenes I can go back to and like rehash or watch on YouTube. No, I don't think I can even watch anything from this because of how traumatized I was watching this in theaters in 2018. I think it is a better movie overall than Midsommar. It's better paced, but I don't think I'd ever rewatch it. So as far as enjoyable goes, it's not enjoyable, and that's why it's not number 1 on this list. I know there's a lot of people that like Midsommar better than Hereditary or Hereditary better than Midsommar, so let me know what you think. We've got to number 1, you guys. Does anyone have any guesses? I don't know if anybody can guess it. So number 1 on the list, the best psychological slow burn horror is The Descent. This movie I was not ready for. I first saw it last year in 2021 and I was 100% not ready for what this movie had to offer. So this movie came out in a time where we were getting a lot of really bad horror movies, in my opinion, a lot of like slasher remakes, and I believe this movie actually was released in the UK. So yeah, it's not an American movie, so it was released first in the UK, probably in the year before or something like that. But The Descent was way ahead of its time. It's a psychological horror that digs deep into your skin. It's extremely disturbing. It's effective right from the start. The character relationships, the dynamics between the characters were so well done, and it turns into something you don't expect it to turn into as well. The more I thought about The Descent, the more I realized that it really does fall into this category. There are similarities to movies like Hereditary. There is this theme of like grief horror and following one character and this character being miserable throughout most of the film. There's problems between the characters. The relationships feel real. They don't feel like fake characters in a movie. But the reason this movie is so far ahead of the other ones is because of the scares. Like, I was terrified watching this movie. It was so scary, and I usually don't say that movies are scary. I might say that they're creepy, disturbing, or maybe they have like jump scares like Insidious and you're like, ah, but this movie was scary. This movie had a bit of everything. It had the themes of grief and depression and all of that, but it also had the gore and the jump scares and the suspense and just everything packed into one movie. This movie is terrifying. If you watched this movie and were not scared by it, then I'd like to hear your comments down below about how you were not scared by it, because it definitely terrified the heck out of me. There's also two endings, the original from the UK and then the American ending, which cuts off at a different point. If you've seen the original ending, you might be as psychologically traumatized as I am. In my opinion, that's the more fitting ending to the film, and the American ending was just not satisfying enough and just left a cheesy feel to the movie. The Descent is on my top 10 horror list. I think it's so well done. I think it combines the horror with a lot of the emotional themes really well, so that we get a psychological horror that's not just a psychological horror, it's also like a gory, scary horror as well, and there's even some action. It just feels like this movie has a bit of everything. If you have not seen The Descent, I really recommend that you watch it. It is so good, you guys. But I think that's all I have for you in today's video. I hope that I didn't cause too much controversy, but I'd like to know your own opinions as well, because I know we all feel differently about some of these films. Now, if I missed some of the films that fall into this category, let me know. If any of you guys are wondering, I never got around to watching Goodnight Mommy, that's why that's not on the list. I also have not seen False Positive because I heard it wasn't that good. Thank you guys so much for watching. My channel is still fairly new, so if you'd like to see more, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, comment down below. Hopefully I will be able to film some more videos for this channel. I've been very busy lately and it's been difficult, but I really enjoy making videos for this channel. So if you have any ideas, leave a comment down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.